Have you ever gone to bed feeling like your heart was carrying more weight than your words could express? Have you ever felt that God was close, yet you didn't know what to say to him? Have you ever sensed that the last minutes of your day could change your entire spiritual life, if only you knew how to use them? Saint Thérèse of Lisieux understood this more deeply than most of us ever will. And what she discovered is both tender and astonishing. The soul that speaks to God before sleep gives him the key to its heart. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. If you seek spiritual guidance rooted in the real teachings of the saints, and if you want your nights and mornings to become places of grace, you won't want to miss what comes next. Because tonight, Saint Thérèse will gently reveal the 4 things every soul should whisper to God before closing its eyes, 4 things that soften the heart, purify the intentions, and prepare the soul for the quiet work of grace that happens while you sleep. Thérèse believed that the last conversation of the day should never be with the world, but with heaven. For her, nighttime wasn't a pause in the spiritual life. It was the moment when God drew closest, like a father bending over a child who is finally still enough to listen. She once wrote, "God does not tire of my littleness. He delights when I come to him as I am." And that is what the nighttime offers us, a chance to come to God as we are. Not as we wish we had been, not as we think we should be, not as we pretend to be during the day's noise, but honestly, tenderly, simply. Thérèse believed that what you tell God before sleep shapes your entire spiritual journey. It gives him permission to enter your wounds. It allows him to heal what the day disturbed. It frees your heart from hidden burdens. It restores the innocence the world erodes. Most Christians think nighttime prayer is optional. For Thérèse, it was a sacred exchange between a tired soul and a loving God, a moment when grace is most gentle and most powerful. And the very first thing she says you must tell God before you sleep is this: "Lord, here is everything I carried today." Not polished, not edited, not filtered, simply everything. Because the heart that hands God the whole day, its beauty and its failures, awakens with a freedom that cannot be explained, only experienced. The first thing Saint Thérèse invites you to say before sleep, "Lord, here is everything I carried today," is not a formal prayer. It is not a speech. It is not a list of perfect words. It is a surrender. Because when you hand God your entire day, you are doing something that very few Christians ever learn to do. You are choosing to rest in God instead of trying to rest in yourself. Thérèse believed that God cherishes this small act more than we realize. Why? Because it is honest, it is humble, and it admits a truth the soul usually hides. "Lord, I cannot carry myself. Not tonight." She often said that God does not enter the soul through strength, but through smallness. And nighttime is when smallness becomes easiest to see. Thérèse would gather her day like someone gathering scattered petals, the things she did well, the things she did poorly, the things she regretted, the things she wished had gone differently, the things she didn't understand, the things she didn't want to admit. Then she placed them all before God, like a child who brings a torn drawing to a loving parent, not ashamed, not afraid, simply trusting that love would understand. Most Christians, without noticing, choose the opposite. They go to bed with their spiritual fists clenched. They replay conversations. They rehearse anxieties. They hide their failures from God, as if he hadn't seen them. They carry the whole weight of the day into the darkness. Thérèse discovered something far gentler, a truth that transformed even her most difficult evenings. When I give God the day, he gives me himself. And it was in the quiet surrender of nighttime that he prepared her for the next morning, softening her heart, stilling her fears, reminding her that holiness is not achieved through effort, but through trust. This is why she said that giving God your day is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because the soul that empties itself at night wakes up light. And once the soul has told God everything it carried, Thérèse said there is a second thing you must whisper before you sleep. A small act that most Christians overlook, yet one that opens heaven in a way few prayers can. The second thing is this: "Lord, thank you for the things I did not like today, not the blessings you enjoyed, not the moments that were easy, but the ones that stretched you, humbled you, and made you grow without realizing it." This gratitude, she believed, is the hidden doorway to peace. When Saint Thérèse of Lisieux encourages you to whisper, "Lord, thank you for the things I did not like today," she is not asking you to pretend that suffering feels sweet or that difficulties are pleasant. She is asking for something far more honest and far more powerful, a gratitude that trusts God more than feelings do. Most Christians thank God only when life feels smooth, when prayers are answered, when circumstances are kind, when things unfold according to their plans. But Thérèse learned, slowly and tenderly, that the soul grows deeper roots when it whispers gratitude in places where gratitude does not come naturally. She once wrote, "Everything that happens to me is a gift from God. I accept it with joy." Many people misunderstand this line, imagining a saint who floated above human frustration. But Thérèse did not float. She struggled. She felt discouraged. She had days when her heart felt numb and her thoughts restless. Her gratitude was not the fruit of naive optimism. It was the fruit of trust. And trust is always most beautiful when it is costly. She believed that thanking God for the little irritations, the unexpected changes, the disappointments and the uncomfortable moments of the day was a form of hidden worship, the kind of worship that happens in the interior, where only God sees. Why did she consider this so important before sleep? Because gratitude transforms the heart, and a transformed heart sleeps differently. It loosens the grip of fear. It unties the knots of resentment. It quiets the noise of self-pity. It frees the soul from replaying the day with bitterness. Gratitude, especially gratitude for what we did not choose, opens a space within us that God fills during the night. Thérèse believed that God works most gently in a grateful soul because gratitude is a form of surrender that says, "Lord, I trust that even this was for my good. Even the interruption, even the delay, even the misunderstanding, even the moment that humbled you, even the task you disliked, even the loneliness that surprised you, even the silence that felt empty." She saw that this kind of gratitude protects the heart from becoming small in the wrong way, from shrinking into cynicism, from hardening with frustration, from closing itself to grace. Instead, it becomes small in the way she cherished, simple, open, tender, trusting like a child. And once the soul has thanked God not only for the blessings, but for the burdens, there is a third thing, Thérèse said, every person should tell God before sleep, a small act so intimate that it becomes a doorway to true peace. "Lord, I forgive those who hurt me today." When Saint Thérèse of Lisieux invites you to whisper before sleep, "Lord, I forgive those who hurt me today," she is not asking you to pretend that wounds don't sting. She is not calling you to deny your emotions, nor to dismiss the small or large offenses that pierced your heart throughout the day. She is inviting you into something far deeper, something she considered one of the purest acts of love a soul can offer God, a forgiveness that begins not in the lips, but in the heart that wants to be free. Most Christians postpone forgiveness until they feel ready. Thérèse learned that the heart almost never feels ready. Feelings do not lead forgiveness. Grace does. And grace always appears when a soul whispers, even with trembling sincerity, "Lord, I forgive. Even if my emotions have not caught up yet, I choose love." She once wrote something that reveals her entire understanding of mercy. True charity consists in bearing with others' faults and not being surprised at their weakness. Every night she offered forgiveness, not because people around her were perfect, not because community life was easy, but because she knew something essential. Unforgiveness is too heavy a burden to carry into sleep. It tightens the chest. It steals inner silence. It disturbs the dreams. It follows the soul into the morning. It anchors the heart in yesterday. Thérèse discovered another truth as well. Forgiveness is not a feeling towards someone else. It is a gift you give God. It is the soul saying, "Lord, I refuse to let bitterness shape me. I refuse to let irritation guide me. I refuse to let another person's weakness become my prison. Here, take it. Take the hurt. Take the resentment. I choose you instead." This forgiveness, whispered at the end of the day, frees the soul in ways few spiritual acts can. It softens the interior walls we build unconsciously. It keeps the heart from becoming defensive, closed, or guarded. It allows God to heal the places we do not admit need healing. It restores the purity of intention that Thérèse cherished, and it keeps the soul childlike, capable of trust, capable of tenderness, capable of love, without calculation. She believed that nighttime is the best moment to forgive, because the soul, exhausted from the day, is finally humble enough to surrender its pride. And once forgiveness has been offered, once the heart is unburdened and open again, Thérèse said there is one final thing you must tell God before sleep, the most intimate and transformative of all. Lord, I am yours. Do with me what you desire. This is the prayer that turns night into grace. When Saint Thérèse of Lisieux whispered at the end of her day, Lord, I am yours. Do with me what you desire. She wasn't saying something poetic for the sake of beauty. She was expressing the very heart of her spirituality, a spirituality built on trust, surrender, and childlike love. This final whisper is the deepest of the four, because it is not about what you did today, nor what others did to you, nor what you struggled to accept. It is about who you belong to. Most Christians end the day thinking about themselves, their failures, their worries, their weaknesses, their hopes, their fears, their unfinished tasks, their uncertainties for tomorrow. Thérèse ended her day thinking about God. She believed something that many forget. The soul becomes what it entrusts itself to. If you entrust yourself to fear, you will sleep with anxiety. If you entrust yourself to regret, you will sleep with heaviness. If you entrust yourself to pride or self-reliance, you will sleep restless, trying to control tomorrow with the strength you do not have. But if you entrust yourself to God, gently, honestly, simply, you enter the night the way a child falls asleep in a parent's arms. Thérèse once wrote, I choose all. What God wills for me, that is my heaven. This wasn't passivity. It was purity of intention, a heart that trusts so deeply that even the unknown becomes a place of peace. Before sleep, she would offer God not just her day, not just her gratitude, not just her forgiveness, but herself, her desires, her fears, her future, her limitations, her weaknesses, her entire interior life. This act of surrender does something extraordinary inside the soul. It dissolves the illusion of control. It frees the heart from tomorrow's worries before tomorrow arrives. It teaches the interior to rest instead of resist. It shapes the night into a hidden prayer, and it allows God to work in the deepest places while you sleep. Thérèse believed that God does his finest work in a soul that goes to sleep surrendered. He heals what is wounded. He softens what is hardened. He restores what is weary. He blesses what is humble. He prepares the heart for graces it cannot yet understand. To whisper, I am yours, is to place your life, your whole life, in hands that do not fail. And this final whisper prepares the soul for something else, something Thérèse insisted was one of the greatest secrets of the spiritual life. God does not wait for morning to love you. He loves you in the night. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux believed that nighttime was not the end of your spiritual life for the day, but the beginning of a different kind of grace. Most people think God speaks mostly in the daylight, through responsibilities, through duties, through encounters, through the visible movements of life. But Thérèse discovered something far more tender. God often speaks most clearly when the world grows quiet. The night removes noise. The night softens pride. The night makes the heart honest. The night reveals what the day hides. And when a soul ends its day with surrender, Lord, I am yours. Do with me what you desire. The night becomes a sanctuary. Thérèse understood this not through visions or grand mystical experiences, but through the simplicity of her own interior life. She learned that when she gave God her weariness, he gave her rest. When she gave God her confusion, he gave her clarity. When she gave God her limitations, he gave her peace. She believed that God enters the soul more deeply during sleep than most Christians ever imagine. Why? Because when you sleep, you cannot pretend. You cannot perform. You cannot try to impress God. You cannot rely on your perceived strength. You cannot defend your ego. You cannot fix your flaws. You cannot hide your weakness. You simply are. And God works beautifully with what is. Thérèse often returned to the image of a child falling asleep in the arms of a loving father. A child does not earn sleep. A child does not negotiate peace. A child does not analyze the day. A child simply surrenders. She wrote, "It is enough to recognize one's nothingness and to abandon oneself like a child into God's arms. Nighttime transforms this abandonment into a silent prayer, one that requires no words, no effort, no preparation. It is the prayer of trust." Thérèse believed that the way you fall asleep shapes the way you wake up. A soul that falls asleep in surrender wakes renewed. A soul that falls asleep in bitterness wakes closed. A soul that falls asleep in gratitude wakes soft. A soul that falls asleep in forgiveness wakes free. A soul that falls asleep in God's hands wakes with God already near. This is why she considered the last whispers of the day so important. Not because God needed them, but because you do. The night is not just a pause in your story, it is a page God writes on, and when the soul surrenders before sleep, that page becomes filled with hidden grace. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux believed that the soul's relationship with God deepens most beautifully in the moments when it becomes small. And there is no moment smaller, softer, or more honest than the final minutes before sleep. The world grows quiet, the tasks fade, the fears lose their sharp edges. The roles you played during the day, strong, capable, responsible, composed, begin to melt away, and what remains is the truth of your heart. Thérèse cherished this moment, because it is the moment when masks fall, when ambition loosens its grip, when the soul becomes transparent, when pride is tired, when the heart is finally simple enough to be touched. She believed that God draws especially near at night, because the soul is too weary to pretend. And this is precisely why your nighttime whispers matter so deeply. What you tell God in weakness means more to Him than what you tell Him in strength. During the day, the soul negotiates, with life, with fears, with expectations, with its own ego. But at night, the soul surrenders. And surrender, for Thérèse, was the essence of holiness. She once wrote, "It is confidence, and nothing but confidence, that must lead us to love. Not confidence in yourself, but confidence in Him, in His tenderness, in His patience, in His desire to care for even the smallest corners of your heart." Thérèse believed that nighttime is when this confidence becomes real, because during sleep you entrust yourself to God completely. You cannot guard yourself. You cannot protect your heart. You cannot direct your thoughts. You cannot control anything. You simply lay your life, your entire life, into His hands. And this helplessness is not a weakness to be ashamed of. It is the doorway to divine intimacy. That is why she saw such beauty in telling God the 4 things before sleep. 1. Here is my day. 2. Thank you for what I did not like. 3. I forgive those who hurt me. 4. I am yours. These 4 whispers strip the soul of everything that is not truth. They return it to its original simplicity. They prepare it for the kind of grace that cannot be received while the heart is busy defending itself. Thérèse believed that when a soul ends the day this way, God descends into it like dawn into darkness, silently, gently, invisibly, yet with light powerful enough to reshape everything. And she insisted that this surrender before sleep is not just a nighttime ritual. It is the foundation of spiritual transformation. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux understood something that many Christians never realize. The spiritual life is not built in great moments. It is built in repeated, hidden, faithful moments. And the moments before sleep are among the most important. Thérèse believed that these final whispers shape more than the night. They shape the soul's entire way of relating to God. Because when you end your day with surrender, you teach your heart a truth it easily forgets. Love, not effort, is the foundation of holiness. So many believers live as though holiness depends on constant performance, praying right, behaving right, measuring themselves by how well they manage to stay patient, strong, pure, focused, self-disciplined. Thérèse lived differently. Her little way was not about perfection. It was about offering imperfection to a God who loves the small, the weak, the tired, the honest, the childlike. Nighttime was when she practiced this most tenderly. She once reflected that God is more pleased by the desire to please him than by the achievement itself, meaning he cherishes the intention, he cherishes the longing, he cherishes the tiny movement of the soul toward him, he cherishes the whispered yes, he cherishes the smallest opening of the heart, he cherishes the tiny, fragile trust that survives a difficult day. This is why the 4 things you tell God before sleep are powerful. They purify the intention and simplify the soul. When you say, "Here is my day," you give God the truth. When you say, "Thank you even for what I disliked," you give God your trust. When you say, "I forgive," you give God your wounds. When you say, "I am yours," you give God your whole being. This is the little way. Not grand acts, not heroic disciplines, but small movements of love offered when you are at your weakest. Thérèse believed that these small movements draw down grace because they come from a sincere heart, not a proud one. And she taught that God responds to such smallness with tenderness, never disappointment. He does not look at the greatness of your prayer life. He looks at the littleness with which you offer yourself. This is why nighttime is sacred. Your soul, stripped of its daily armor, stands honestly before him. There, in that simplicity, God finds space to work. And even more beautifully, the soul finds space to be loved. For Thérèse, this is where transformation begins. Not in achieving much, but in allowing God to love much. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux believed that the 4 nighttime whispers do something very subtle, yet profoundly transformative. They teach the soul to live the entire spiritual life in a posture of openness. Because you cannot end your day with honesty, gratitude, forgiveness, and surrender without slowly learning to live your day the same way. Thérèse noticed this in her own heart. The more she entrusted her day to God at night, the lighter her mornings became. The more she thanked him for the difficult moments, the gentler her reactions grew. The more she forgave before sleep, the softer her judgments became. The more she surrendered her whole being to him, the freer her interior life felt. To her, these whispers were not a ritual, they were a reorientation. They bent the heart toward God, like a flower bends toward light. She believed that most spiritual problems come from a divided interior, a heart that wants to love God, but also wants to protect itself, a heart that longs to surrender, but also clings to control, a heart that desires holiness, but also fears the simplicity that holiness requires. Nighttime, she said, is when the division becomes visible. In the quiet, in the darkness, in the stillness, in the solitude, the soul sees what it truly carries. And these 4 whispers, small, simple, childlike, become a way of stitching the heart back together. They bring unity, they bring coherence, they bring peace. Thérèse realized that God does not transform a soul through emotional highs or rare mystical experiences. He transforms it through daily openings, tiny cracks where grace enters the interior world. Each nighttime whisper is one such opening. Here is my day. Openness of truth. Thank you for what I disliked. The openness of trust. I forgive. Openness of mercy. I am yours. Openness of surrender. These openings allow God to reshape the soul from the inside out. And Thérèse taught that when a soul practices these small acts faithfully, a kind of spiritual recalibration happens. The heart becomes calmer, the mind becomes clearer, the conscience becomes gentler, the desires become simpler, the will becomes more docile, the fears become quieter, the ego becomes smaller, the love becomes purer. She saw that nighttime prayer flows into daytime holiness because the soul that rests in God naturally rises toward him the next morning. To her, this was the hidden secret of the little way. Small acts done faithfully become great transformations over time. And for Thérèse, this leads to the most beautiful truth of all, a truth she lived with every breath. As Saint Thérèse of Lisieux reached the deepest understanding of her little way, she saw something radiant, something so simple that most Christians overlook it, and yet so powerful that it becomes the very architecture of holiness. The soul becomes holy, not by doing great things, but by allowing God to love it in small moments. and nowhere is this more accessible than at the end of the day. Because nighttime is the hour of truth, the hour when the masks fall, the hour when the heart grows quiet, the hour when the soul finally stops running, the hour when God can approach without resistance. Thérèse would often imagine God bending over the world at night, moving gently through the hearts that are finally still enough to hear him, hearts that whisper their day to him, hearts that dare to thank him even for what was difficult, hearts that choose to forgive what hurt, hearts that surrender themselves without fear. To her, these hearts shine in the darkness. She believed that these 4 whispers create the conditions for grace to flow freely. Honesty opens the door. Gratitude clears the space. Forgiveness softens the walls. Surrender invites God inside. This was the rhythm of her own spiritual life, a rhythm that turned her nights into sanctuaries and her soul into a vessel of quiet, simple love, and she insisted that anyone, absolutely anyone, can live the same way. You do not need extraordinary strength. You do not need mystical experiences. You do not need perfect discipline. You do not need brilliant theology. You do not need to feel holy. You do not need to have had a good day. You only need a small heart, willing to whisper small things with great love. Thérèse believed that if a soul ended each day with these 4 simple statements, its entire spiritual life would transform over time. Lord, here is everything I carried today. The offering of truth. Lord, thank you for the things I did not like today. The offering of trust. Lord, I forgive those who hurt me today. The offering of mercy. Lord, I am yours. Do with me what you desire. The offering of surrender. Together, these whispers form a ladder, made not of effort but of love. A ladder so small, so simple, so gentle, that even the weakest soul can climb it. This is the secret she longed for the world to understand. Holiness does not happen in your strength. It happens in your surrender. And every night before you sleep, you have the chance to surrender again. Not perfectly, not impressively, just lovingly, in the way that made Saint Thérèse shine like one of God's smallest, brightest lights. This is the little way, and the night is where it blossoms.